The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life.
So with that being said, when he shared that with me, I said, what do you mean they're not my problem? I've given it homes, I've given it women, I've given it careers, I've given it family members, I've given it my life, I've overdosed more than I can count. I've given it my sexuality. When it asks, I give, because I don't have the privilege to not give. And again, in my story, you're going to hear that I'm very upfront, I'm very descriptive, and I'm very graphic. Because the reality is I keep my past married to my present. Because the moment that I forget where I've come from, I will absolutely return. So when he shared with me that that was not my problem, but it was the solution to my problem, it was like a shotgun blast to the face. Because I really believed in my heart of hearts, if I just got the right job, if I just got the right woman, if I just got the right outlook on life, the right break, the right chance, things will be better. So with that being said, I jump on a plane and I return back to Westchester, Pennsylvania. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. I lived with that after-school special. I lived with that cautionary tale of the man that I was never, ever, ever going to become. As a matter of fact, I excelled at everything that I did in my life to prove a point that I would never be that man. First skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade. Hanging out with Michael Jordan. Touring the world with Tony Hawk. Designing my pro model at the age of 15. A little bit further down the road, I end up in those movies, Jackass, and those TV shows called Viva La Bam. I'm doing some things in life that people equate to success or happiness that some might even dream of doing. The reality of my life, what it really looks like on the flip side of that coin, is I've now been in 11 inpatient treatment centers. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I'm about to wake up on life support for 7 days. My mother has sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. She has nothing left to give. So one day she went to church across the street from her house, and Father Mike saw her sitting in the pew crying uncontrollably. Father Mike looked at my mother, Miss Pat, and said, Miss Pat, what's wrong? Miss Pat, my mother said, Father Mike, it's Brandon. He's never been worse. There's nothing left I can do or give to help my child. So I simply went to God with one prayer. And with that, Father Mike's eyes lit up. He said, oh, yeah, Miss Pat, what's that? Miss Pat, my mother said, Father Mike, it's real simple. The prayer consists of God, please cure him. God, please kill him. Or God, please kill me because I can't take it anymore. And Father Mike, for the first time in his life, looked at my mother and said, how dare you go to God like that with a plan for your son? God has a plan for your son. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And Brandon doesn't know what it is. What I've learned in my journey of sobriety is that my life is live forward and learn backwards. And now, only through the grace of God, I've been able to remain sober long enough where I can recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, prove to me that the God of my understanding was the only person that could do for me what I could not do for myself, which is lift me of the obsession or rid me of the desire to want to drink or drug. Because as I share with you, I had changed women, homes, careers, states, worlds. I moved to London, to Finland, to Paris, all in hopes to escape my disease. Not until I had that spiritual experience, that was the only thing that was able to lift me of the obsession. But when Father Mike looked at my mother and said, how dare you go to God like that with a plan for your son? God has a plan for your son. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And Brandon doesn't know what it is. And looking back, thank God I didn't know what it was, because I would have fucked it up. I would have gotten away with it. right? Again, a guy who's done some things in life to equate to success or having some even dream of doing. The reality of what my life really looks like is I live in an abandoned house on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park in Baltimore City. My worldly possessions, everything that I own in this world, consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant that fits into a bag that doubles as my pillow, and a needle and a spoon. I stand on the corner and I prostitute my body for $40 all day to buy another bag of heroin. How did I get here? I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations. Looking back, it's real simple to see how I got here. I got here because I sat there with a closed mind and a closed heart. I got here because I sat there and I compared out. I got here because I sat there and I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. So now I got to come up with another plan. I'm no fool by any means. I come from better. I know better. I'm an outside of the box kind of thinker. I'm the kind of guy that if I believe it, I can see it. I don't need to see anything to believe it, right? I told you I've been in 12 inpatient treatment centers. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People take life insurance policies out on me. I'm a homeless heroin addict who lives to use and use to live. I'm the kind of alcoholic that wants to kill himself on a daily basis, but I don't want to hurt myself in the process. I'm horrible at suicide because I keep waking up. I'm in a position in life where I'm so low the curve looks like a skyscraper, and I got to figure out a way up and out of my position. I'm no fool by any means. I do not have a high school diploma. I got my GED in prison, but I decide I'm going to write a book. I write my whole book pen and paper. I write a book in 12 chapters. I give it to my co-author, who's a very smart man with letters in front and behind his name. He turns 12 chapters into 23 chapters. I've now written an autobiography addiction memoir. We shop. We get a literary agent who shops that memoir around. The book gets bought by Citadel Press, Kensington Publishers. The book does really, really well. I'm now an author. I'm a published author. I'm a published author who's written an autobiography addiction memoir. The book becomes a New York Times top 10 seller. I'm now receiving hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail from all over the world in all these different languages of people who have read my book that would write to me and say, I read your book. I didn't want my story to get as bad as yours. I have 30 days. Mothers or fathers writing to me saying, I read your book. I understand why my daughter or son does what they do. It's not that I'm a bad mother. It's that they suffer with the disease of addiction. My delusional alcoholic brain just told me I wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, for anybody out there who has no idea what I'm talking about, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is like our guide to life. It's like the Bible to a Christian, literally. But what I failed to share with you is that I wrote this book while sniffing copious amounts of cocaine and drinking endless amounts of wine. The day that my book's about to be released, it's in Times Square in New York City. My literary agent's there, my publisher's there, my manager's there. All these well-to-do people in the scholarly world are there for the release of my new book, this autobiography addiction memoir that I had just written that was becoming wildly successful. I didn't have any money that day to get high. And my people would not allow me to have any money to go get high, because what I didn't understand then that I clearly see now is that it would not be a good look, me sitting at the Barnes and Nobles in Times Square in New York City as the launch of my new addiction memoir takes place, and I'm doing these autograph signings while nodding out on heroin. But see, the reality is the disease from which I possess, the one that brought me through these doors, begging for one more chance of sobriety, that disease that when it calls, I answer by any and all means necessary. Right. And I don't have the privilege to say, yeah, but I got to work right now. I'll get back to you in 2 hours. No, the disease from which I possess, when it says, I say, yes, sir, how high, when, and where. So now I'm confronted with an ultimatum of like, I don't have my heroin. I can't get any money to secure the heroin that I need to not become sick so I can sit through my job, which is doing an autograph signing it, and my own autobiography addiction memoir release in New York City at Times Square, my time to shine, right? Like my rebirth, if you will. This is going to be the thing that's going to help me. How could it not, right? Everything is external. And all of a sudden they wheel my books in on this dolly in these big boxes, and I have another buddy of mine from Baltimore who's with me, and he doesn't feel good either that day as well. And all of a sudden they wheel my books in on this dolly in these big boxes, and I take a look at my buddy, and we don't say a word, but we have a complete conversation, that language of the heart untreated, if you will. I stand up, he stands up in uniform position, and we go over. I grab 2 boxes of my own books. He grabs 2 boxes of my own books. Now, I've just stolen 4 boxes of my own autobiography, addiction memoir books from my own book release party in New York City to run to Penn Station to jump on the next train back to Baltimore to 2 different skate shops where I autograph and I sell these books to secure more money to go buy more heroin. How the fuck did I get there? How? I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations. My mother was a nuclear physicist. My brother was an attorney in the White House. I lived with the cautionary tale, the man that I would never become. I saw what addiction did to a human being firsthand. I experienced the wrath of addiction firsthand. Excelled at everything that I did to prove a point that I would never become that man, that I was always going to be better than he was. First skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, private tutor that flies with, designing my pro model for Pal Peralta. In these movies, they break box office records. On these TV shows that do extremely well. Now, a New York Times top 10 selling author who's written an autobiography addiction memoir. Did a lot of things in life that people would equate to success or happiness, and some might even dream of doing. But the reality of what my life really looks like is I've just been in 12 inpatient treatment centers. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I just woke up from being on life support for 7 days. I've been medevaced to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states from 4 different overdoses. My mother has sold 3 homes to pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. Nothing left to give. She's went to God with one prayer: God, please cure him or kill him. I can't take it anymore. I reside on the street corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, selling my body for $40 to anybody who's interested. Everything that I own consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. How did I get here? How? So I finished doing what I'm doing in Baltimore, sell the books, shoot the dope. I jump back on a train, go back to Westchester, and I go to my second ex-fiance's home. And when I get to our house at the time, I put my key in the lock, and a common theme in my story is that locks stop working. The lock stops working, I do the next best thing, I kick the door in. When I kick the door in, the home is completely empty. She had taken our furniture, our artwork, my clothing, her clothing, our cats, you name it, it was gone. And I found myself in a fetal position, coming to the realization that this home is now a spitting image of what I have become. This big empty shell of a house now consoles this big empty shell of a man lying on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. And the only thing I can think of, the only thing that crosses my mind is that gentleman from that first treatment center that said, do yourself a favor and don't turn 18 in a place like this. And at that moment, my phone goes off, and it's my mother. My mother is the woman that has never said no to me. She's loved me when I didn't love myself. She's prayed for me when I didn't pray for myself. She's cared for me when I didn't care for myself. She shows up for me when I don't show up for myself. She called me, and around 5 years ago in Baltimore City, an incident had occurred where the police killed a young black man by the name of Freddie Gray. And when that incident occurred in Baltimore City, it had turned the city into the movie The Purge. They were robbing, they were looting, they were shooting, they were stealing. There was a 9 o'clock curfew. No one was to be on the streets. They had brought the National Guard in with their machine guns and tanks, and they stood on every other corner. And my mother lives around 12 blocks from where that incident occurred. And when she called me, she said, "Brandon, can you come make sure I'm safe? I'm terrified." My intentions were to make sure that woman was as safe as humanly possibly could be. My intentions were to make sure that woman who's never let me down got what she asked for. My actions look like this. I jumped on the train. I ran right back to Baltimore. I got to her house, walked upstairs, physically removed that woman from her bedroom. I had now commandeered her bedroom. I left that bedroom once a day. She now resides as sleeping on the sofa in her living room because she's in fear that, like, in between me chain smoking, I'm going to fall asleep and catch the house on fire. And her next best thought is if she sleeps on the sofa next to the front door and I catch her house on fire, she could probably make it out alive. I'm a 35-year-old homeless heroin addict who resides in his mother's bedroom. I leave that room once a day. My worldly possessions consist of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. Fits into that bag that doubles as a pillow. One day I go out to get my heroin and I come back and my sister and my mother are at the home, and when I go to put the key in her lock, it no longer works. Now, I love my mother. I would never kick her door in, so I politely knock, right? See how disconnected from reality I have become? The abnormal has become the normal. I'm living on this animalistic level where I simply use to live and I live to use. So as I knock on the door, with that being said, my mother comes to the door. Again, she's crying uncontrollably. My sister hands me my worldly belongings, 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant in that bag that was my pillow. My needle and my spoon are in that bag, and my mother looks at me and she said, "Brandon, I'm so sorry, but I can no longer love you to death. You have to go." And with that, a police officer comes around the corner and he serves me with a restraining order to leave her premises and never to return again. How? How did I end up here? My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of addiction. First skateboard endorsed by Gatorade, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, been in these movies that break box office records. Now I'm a New York Times top 10 seller author who's written a book on addiction. Did some things in life that people would equate to success or happiness, some even dream of doing. The reality of what my life really looks like is I've just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. I'm about to enter into my 13th treatment center. I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies on them. I've been medevaced to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states for 4 different overdoses. I reside on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, letting men blow me for another bag of heroin. I'm the kind of alcoholic today that wants to kill himself on a daily basis. I'm terrified to hurt myself in the process. I'm horrible at suicide because I keep waking up, and I'm in a position in life where I'm so low the curb looks like a skyscraper. I take my belongings, I take my restraining order, and I'm walking up the street. And I go back to the abandoned house that I get high in and sometimes reside in. And when I get back there, I'm doing what I'm continuously doing, which is getting high, and my phone goes off, and it's this woman. And she said, "I've read your book, it saved my life." And I could care less because I don't want mine right now. And she said, "What do you say about an all-exclusive paid trip to Fort Lauderdale?" I said, that's great. I need some heroin, some cocaine, some Xanax, and some wine. And she says, that's no problem. And I think to myself, that's a red flag. My book saved her life, but she's going to give me substances to kill mine. But again, like I said, I don't even care. I don't want my life, so who cares? I do a little bit more research. I see that she lives in a hotel. That's not a good look either. I do a little bit more research, and I come to the understanding that she's a lady of the night or a dancer, which I have no problem with because I've seen me become both of those things for $10. Mind you, she's paying for airfare, she's paying for flights, she's paying for board and food, she's paying for the most important thing, drugs. And when I get there, she has two requirements that I must fulfill. When I touch down in Fort Lauderdale, she wants to party and she wants to make love, for lack of better words. And I don't know about anybody out there, but when I do heroin, I do neither. I sleep. So I know that I'm going to wear my welcome out really, really, really fast. Now, see, what I forgot to share with you is I'm sitting in an abandoned house in Baltimore City. It's a Thursday night. I'm due to report to my parole officer at 8 a.m. the following morning in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Right? I'm supposed to be in Pennsylvania. I'm not supposed to leave the state of Pennsylvania. I'm supposed to be clean and sober. I'm supposed to report to her office at 8 a.m. and I'm supposed to produce a clean urine. I'm in Baltimore City. I'm in a shooting gallery. I have a needle hanging out of my arm. I'm about to head to Fort Lauderdale to catch I'm about to head to BWI Airport to catch a red-eye flight to Fort Lauderdale. And if I piss into a cup, it will light up like a Christmas tree. But remember, I possess this delusional alcoholic brain that lies to my own voice, that makes me believe the unbelievable. And that brain tells me this. It's 11:30 Thursday night. She's bought me a flight to Fort Lauderdale. My brain tells me, don't worry, get dressed accordingly. Make sure you look proper for Miss Ward, because if you look disheveled, she'll probably violate you. Hurry up, get dressed accordingly, make it to the airport, get to Fort Lauderdale, get what you need to get from her, and you'll make it back in plenty of time to produce a clean urine for Miss Ward. And the reality is that is absolutely 100% physically impossible to do.
And not even reasonable, but your mind saying it is.
Reasonable. It defies logic. Let's say I owned a private jet, I still could not make it back in time because I couldn't produce a clean urine.
Yeah.
If I pissed into a cup, it would light up like a Christmas tree, right? Like, that's the reality. But the disease from which I possess says, don't worry, get dressed accordingly because you're on a tight timeline. Hurry up and get to Fort Lauderdale, and you'll make it back by 8 a.m. to do. And I believe it so much so that I get dressed, right? I put these at once point in time nice slacks on. If you overlook the cigarette hole burns, I put this nice like button-up shirt on, and I put these at once point in time nice Kenneth Coles on, but I've lost a shoestring along the way. Right? I don't wear underwear at this point in my life because I'm a homeless heroin addict. I don't find imaginary dressers in imaginary alleys to wash underwear to be responsible for. I live to use and I use to live. That's what my life looks like. So I get dressed accordingly, but before I get to the airport to board this flight, I got to stop over in West Baltimore to cop a few more things from the boys because I can't get sick on this flight, right? So when I go to score from the boys see fit to rob me as opposed to serve me. So when they rob me, they rip my front and my back pockets completely out. Now my front and my back are completely exposed. They rip my shirt open, and the only button that stays buttoned is this very top button. And I got these shoes on with one shoestring. I'm now roaming the streets of West Baltimore looking like a gay East LA Cholo gangbanger kind of guy. That doesn't go as planned, so I got to hurry up and get to the airport because after all, I'm on a tight timeline. I don't want to not make my appointment for Miss Ward in the morning. So when I get to the airport, two things I've learned in my career is I will never win in an argument with a judge or a TSA airport security agent. What they say goes. So I step up to the counter at the airport in hopes to get my ticket, and the woman takes one look at me and she says, Mr. Novak, are you under the influence of anything? And I say, absolutely not. She says, I believe that you are, and you will not fly for 72 hours. Not like the next flight out or tomorrow morning. This is 3 days, for Christ's sake. Now, see, my delusional alcoholic mind just painted this whole picture. The woman knows who I am. Her son or daughter has an issue with addiction, and she's blaming her kid's disease on me. How dare her piss on my parade? The reality is I'm still dressed like the gay East LA Cholo gangbanger, and I would not be allowed to walk outside of my house, let alone board a flight anywhere in the world. Again, having remained sober long enough to look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, I can see where God was interfering with my plans on a daily basis. And this is the first one that became clearly evident. Now there's like a lot more, but I can see this clearly. I did not want to get on that plane. My heart was beating 10 million miles an hour like I just shot 20 kilos of cocaine. I did not want to get on the plane, but the disease from which I possess said, shut the fuck up and get on. Like, you don't have to say so, not go. Shut up. God simply dressed up in the form of a TSA airport security agent and did for me what I could not do for myself that day. Because I did not want to go, I swear to God, but I didn't have the ability to say, no, I'm not going, because my disease said, you're fucking going. And when she would not allow me access to that flight, it was like such a relief. Because I knew if I entered Fort Lauderdale, it was going to end really bad. I knew it. I felt it in my heart. It was going to end really bad. So I get out of line, I go to the corner, and I call that same sponsor, that guy named Lex that I had called when I was in Finland, in the bathroom, shooting up. And I said, Lex, I'm stranded at BWI Airport, and I want to kill myself. He said, no, what you're going to do is you're going to get on the next train from Baltimore to Philadelphia. We're going to pick you up at the train station, 30th Street Station. We're going to come pick you up, right? I'm this alcoholic who's been deemed unhelpful and unfixable. And now you people are going to leave your cookouts. You're going to leave your families. You're going to leave your kids on Memorial Day 2015. You're going to leave your family, all your loved ones, to come pick this hopeless, helpless alcoholic up. You let me stay at your house. You take me to see Miss Ward the next morning. She grants me one more shot of mercy. She says, go back to treatment. I'm giving you one more chance. I go back to the same facility that I had attempted to get sober at 4 previous times. What that looked like the 4 previous times is I would sit in this chair with the same intake coordinator, and she'd say, okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance covers 90 days. I would say, in theory, 90 days sounds great, but in reality, I'm more of like a 45-day kind of fella. And she'd laugh at me each and every time and say, sweetheart, you have no idea. Anything or everything that you put in front of your recovery does not or will not matter, because you will lose it. May 25th, 2015, something different happened today. I had finally been demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. I had been beaten into a state of reasonableness where I'm sitting in the same chair with the same intake coordinator in the same conversation that we've had 4 previous times. And it's that day when she says, Mr. Novak, your insurance covers 90 days. I can't even come back with a counter offer to her offer, because if I say no, that entails an explanation. I've literally, for the first time in my life, thank God, have been beaten speechless by my disease of addiction. She says, sweetheart, you're in no condition to do your intake. Get up to detox. I'll see you in 4 days. I hobble up to detox. Again, I have the same outfit on, the clothes that are literally tied on by a shoestring with one shoestring in my shoes. My front and my back completely exposed, my shirt ripped open. Everything I own in this bag consists of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order that my mother just had served on me. I get up to detox. There's this 19-year-old tech worker, and he said, Mr. Novak, you're back. And I said, aren't you a fucking genius, right? Because nothing was happy to me. There was no form or reason to be excited about anything. My life was over as I knew it. He said, Mr. Novak, I regret to inform you that your clothes are not rehab oriented. You need some underwear. You need some sweatpants. You need some slides. The fact of the matter was, I never prayed for such simple articles of clothing in my life. And I remember them telling me in one of the many attempts of other treatment centers that I had entered that a grateful alcoholic will never use again. A grateful addict will never use again. The reality was I didn't have any underwear. I didn't have any sweatpants. What I had is what you saw on me. And he said, okay, come down to the basement, to the donations room. We're going to see if we can find you some used underwear. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. First skateboarder sponsored by Gatorade, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk. In these movies that break box office records, New York Times top 10 selling author that has written a book on addiction. I've done some things in life that people equate to success or having something to dream of doing. The reality is I'm standing in my 13th inpatient treatment center. I've just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I've lost count of how many detoxes and outpatients I've been into. Medevac, 4 different hospitals in 4 different states for 4 different overdoses. My mother has sold 3 homes to pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. And now stand in the basement of a Catholic Charities rehab that cost me $3 to get into, next to a 19-year-old kid as he thumbs through these boxes looking for used underwear, and I'm praying to God that he finds them. How the fuck did I get there? I got there because I sat there with a closed mind and a closed heart. I got there because I sat there and I compared out. I got here because I sat there and I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. Little did I know that in that basement, May 25th, 2015, as I stand directly beside a 19-year-old kid thumbing through these donation boxes looking for used underwear, that I found myself in a position in life that no word in the English dictionary could properly suffice to how bad or how bleak or how dark I felt or looked about my life. And little did I know that at that very moment, 2 things were about to take place that was forever going to change the terms of my contract of being a human being on this life. The very first thing that I had come to the realization of that had forever changed my life from that point forward is that for the prior 24 years upon entering this treatment center, I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. Therefore, when you suggested what I needed to do, I suggested why you needed to fuck off. I had this grand realization as I stood in this basement of this 13th treatment center next to a 19-year-old kid as he's thumbing through these boxes looking for used underwear, and I'm praying to God that he finds them. I came to the realization on my own that you know what I do know is that I don't fucking know. And that my very best thinking places me in positions like this time after time after time after time. That's the first realization that has forever changed my life. That at the time I could not see. I thought that my life was over as I knew it. The second thing that I have come to understand, right? My life is live forward and learn backwards. Now looking back at that moment, I was finally met face to face with the God of my understanding as a direct result of that gift of desperation. The pain had become so great that when the kid couldn't find the used underwear, he hands me a pair of size 40 women's sweatpants with no drawstring. He hands me a woman's tank top and a pair of size 13 Jesus sandals. I don't know how alert or attentive any of your followers are, but I'm not a woman and I do not wear a size 13. But as a direct result of me coming to the realization that what I do know is that I don't know, and that I've now just been met face to face with the God of my understanding as a direct result of that gift of desperation, I've been overcome with a sense of willingness unlike anything that I have ever experienced on this earth. I take those women's clothing, the shoes that don't fit me, I go upstairs, I get a shower, I get that Baltimore City smell off me. Never so excited to put women's clothing on in my life. I successfully complete that 90-day treatment center. In that 90-day treatment center, what they taught me is that if you change your perception, you can change your world. That your defects can become your assets with the slightest shift of your perception. And that your history does not have to dictate your future, but it can most certainly guide and direct it. I successfully completed that 90-day treatment center. From there, I went to a sober living house where I resided for 1 year, and they also taught me in there is that my mentality will create the reality for which I live in. If you just change your perception, you can just change your world. I had been on parole and probation from 16 years old to 35, never a free day in between. It simply just transitioned and followed me from state to state, country to country. 2 months shy of my 2-year anniversary, I signed my release papers. I'm literally a free man that can go anywhere with anybody anytime I like. I decided I wanted to get my 2-year Alcoholics Anonymous coin abroad, so I flew to Paris to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and picked up my medallion. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that cost me $10 to get out of one bag of heroin at a time. My mother called me 9 months into my process of sobriety, and she said, Brandon, I hate when you come to visit. I said, why? She said, because I get so sad when you leave. The very same mother that brought me a plot, the very same mother that took life insurance policies out of me, the very same mother that served me with a restraining order, now tells me that she doesn't like when I come to visit because she gets so sad when I leave. That book that I had written, upon them understanding and discovering that I had stolen my own books for my own book release party to take back to Baltimore to sell, to buy more heroin. I had a 3-book deal. They had ripped that contract up on site. 14 months ago, my second book came out. This Monday, today actually, my third book just went into print. 9 months ago, 9 months ago, I released the first ever addiction graphic novel. I have a documentary that's going to be going to the Sundance and the Cannes Film Festival. This is not me bragging or boasting by any means. It's me simply saying, if you want what I have, do what I do, and you can get what I got. The solution's open and it's free for the taking. The question is, what are you willing to do to get yourself out of the position that you have created for yourself? All this change that you see me in, I'm not clever enough to paint myself in this picture for what you see me in. All I simply did was came to the realization that what I do know is that I don't know. And my very best thinking places me here. So I simply got out of my way, put my hand out, asked for help. And what I've learned is the longer I stay sober, the older that I get, the less that I know. For the first time, I walked into a treatment center with a lack of plan. That lack of plan has produced the best of plans, because all it simply allowed me to do is get out of my own way. I am my biggest enemy. I'm going to close with this story. There's a father that works from home. The father's swamped in paperwork, and he's watching his son, and his son keeps banging his dad on the knee. Dad, take me out to play, take me out to play. The father's trying to think of a way to buy 1 or 2 days so he can complete this work that he's scheduled to have finished. He walks into his office and he sees a big picture of the puzzle of the world map, and the father thinks to himself, I got it. He goes over to the desk in his office. He completely dismantles the picture of the puzzle of the world map, and he throws it on the floor. He says to the son, when you put the picture of the puzzle of the world map back together, I'll take you out to play. The father leaves that office, surely thinking he bought 1 or 2 days. 20 minutes later, he comes back, bangs a dad on the knee. Dad, I did it. Dad's thinking to himself, impossible. He walks back into that office as sure as the day is long, the picture of the puzzle of the world map's put back together. In complete disbelief, he looks at his son. He said, son, how do you do it? Son said, Dad, it was real simple. On the back of the picture of the puzzle of the world map was a picture of a man. I put the man back together. The world fell back in place. Together we stand. Divided I die. My name is Brandon. Thank you for listening.
Man, thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you for being here today and being so open with us. For those of you listening, you got to hear Brandon's story, and I'm sure some of you know exactly what he has, been through, believed, felt. And for some of you, it's been probably an eye-opening experience. But now today, Brandon and I didn't know this, and what's crazy is this is airing on the 5-year anniversary date. There's a lot of significance in a lot of this interview and just the timeliness of it. But Brandon, if you were to talk and kind of close, if you were to talk to yourself at 20, your 20-year-old self would have probably told you, well, I like to screw off, right? Like you wouldn't have been interested at that point. And you had to learn and come to the low before you'd listen. If there is someone listening, like your mom, who has a son or a daughter who's just struggling, or if there is that son or daughter listening, if you were to throw a Hail Mary for what could you say to potentially reach them, what would that be?
Unfortunately, with the disease of addiction, it's such a case-by-case scenario. Right. I really wish that it was a black and white, one size fits all, because then we could actually come up with a solution to this terrible pandemic that we find ourselves in. But what I would suggest is that you sometimes you don't say anything at all. You just let them talk and listen. And what I've learned in my experience is that I never talk to them or at them, but simply with them. I meet them where they're at, not where I believe they should be or where I think they're expected to go. We meet them where they're at, and we work together collectively as one to figure out a plan to help get them out of it. I work in the world of recovery and in the world of helping people find help. So if it's okay, I'd like to share with the viewers my personal number that they can call me and my team at, and we will do the best that we can with what we have, resources available to get them or their loved ones the help that not only they need, but more so deserve. And that phone number is 610-635-9092.
Yeah, and I'm going to put links to your website, the resources, the phone number in the show notes. So if you're listening to this or watching it, whether the video cast or the podcast, we'll have those resources for you. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this question, but I don't want it to sound offensive at all. But what's different this time? Like, we listen to your story and we can hear what's different. But today, so I can talk to you in 6 months or in 5 years, and you're still clean and you're still moving forward for God. What are the things you're doing, the practical steps today to ensure that
Sure.
life is victorious?
Yeah. How am I securing my investment?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like a lot of your friends, even they're coming out of the same background, the same struggles, and it's hard to say goodbye to a friend. I mean, I have friends from my childhood who I love, but we just
the
can't
thing
hang out.
is right, when you get sober, early sobriety, they say, you need to change people, places, and things. And the reality is that, like, for me, I didn't really have to change much, because what happened is that in staying sober, my interest had changed. The things that I like to do and who I did them with had changed. So I didn't have to go back to my old drinking and drugging buddies and be like, we can't hang, because the reality is that they don't really want to do what I'm doing at that point in their life, and I definitely don't want to do what they're doing. So it's really no love loss. I still love them just as much, and I'm still their friend just as much. It's just that we're kind of on two different paths and two different pages, two different books. So it's really no harm, no foul there. But what I do to secure my sobriety on a daily basis is I listen to what they told me in the beginning of sobriety. And what that was is they said, look, stick to the basics, kids. So God willing, you never have to go back to the basics. So I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. I take people through the 12 steps. And most importantly, I have a conscious contact with the God of my understanding. Meaning every day I get on my knees and I start my day out that way. And every day I end my day on my knees and asking him in the morning and thanking him in the evening. And that's really who's done for me everything that you see now is the God of my understanding, my higher power. And that's who gets all the credit. The moment I start thinking that I did this, that I'm the Almighty, that's when I get back to what we talked about earlier, my devices, which is Brandon's Anonymous, Brandon sponsors Brandon, and Brandon's God. And then it's only a matter of time before I'm drinking and drugging again.
Yeah, and that's so good, man. When we submit and we're really at that humility, God just loves us where totally.
That's it.
Let me ask you another question, if you don't mind. It's ringing in my head. You were for years on the side of the addict, people trying to help. What's it like now being the person who cares and trying to reach the addicts? How does that, the struggle, the frustration, what's that feel like being on the other side?
It's what they told me, is that my defects could become my assets with a shift of perception. So the very same thing that was killing me and my family for years now provides me a lifeline to not only for myself to stay sober, but to help the masses, right? Because what happens is I put my number out there and people see my story, they hear my story, they've read my story, and books and tabloids and movies, and they know that my story holds depth and weight. It's the real deal. It's not me giving a bunch of hypothesis or educated guess on what may or may not happen if you choose to smoke weed. Like, so what happens is, remember how I started out and I said that I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority and I will never conform unless it becomes my idea. When I am open and public as I am about my story, and someone watches it and they say, if that guy can do it, there's no reason that I can't. And they pick their phone up and they call my number. Can you help me? The terms of their contract have now changed, because for the first time, or maybe the 10th time, it's now become their idea. And when it becomes our idea, like my 13th treatment center, I excel at a rapid pace. You know what I mean? So I don't even remember where I was going with that, but.
Well, I was just saying, what's it like to be on the other side when you're trying to help?
I mean, so I don't know much when it comes to the world, right? I can't tell you how to produce, I can't tell you how to perform brain surgery, or extract a rotted tooth. I can't give you legal advice, but what I can tell you, the one thing I know through and through, is the disease of addiction and alcoholism. I believe that my God took me on the path that I went on to become his messenger in this journey that I now find myself on today. It makes sense to me why someone would prefer to sit out there and continue to drink and drug as opposed to accept my help. I get it. It makes complete sense. I'm the best devil's advocate you could find.
Yeah. But for those people listening, reach out to Brandon. Check out the website.
Please. Yeah. You go to BrandonNovak.com. It's all one word. That's all my stuff there. So you can check out what I'm up to, where I'm at, what's going on in my world. And as well, reach me directly at that number I just gave to you.
And for you today, again, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Would you say that, you've had the money, you've had the houses, the stuff, you've had the people, the women, but being clean and living life now, as much as your mind lied to you in the past saying, oh, you need that next hit, you need the heroin. Would you say that you're living your best life now, clean?
Oh, absolutely. I always say that sobriety has given me everything that drugs and alcohol ever promised me.
Yeah.
I've been happier in my life.
That's awesome, man. So, all right, you've been amazing and remarkable. You've shared your past with us. We've kind of talked about today. Where's Brandon going in the future? Where, how can we as the listener help you, my friend?
Again, as I always say, I walked into this process with 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant, a needle, a spoon, and a restraining order that my mother just had served against me. So when I want to make my God laugh, I tell him my day is going to go. I can't tell you what tomorrow brings. I can tell you that if I can literally do anything that I want, provided I put my mind to it. Literally. I believe that in my heart of hearts, because of what the God of my understanding has allowed me to put together in a 5-year span. I just know if I continue to keep my sobriety first, anything is possible. But the very near projects that are coming out is the sequel to my first book, Dreamseller. By the time this airs, that will either have just come out or already be out.
Awesome. We'll look at picking it up, man. I'll put a link in the show notes if it's out in time.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Awesome, Brandon. Well, anything that we missed, any parting thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
No, man, I think I've kind of encapsulated and covered everything.
Good, man. Well, I appreciate you. I'm so thankful you're
God.
here.
God bless, man. It was really cool walking down memory lane with you.
Yeah, dude, definitely. And hopefully we can get together someday and, continue the conversation. Yeah, man, for you, the listener out there, check out the show notes, get a hold of Brandon. You can ask me any questions. Again, for something like this, I'll point you right to Brandon or someone who can help you. But we love you. The whole reason Brandon and I just spent this time was to help you. There's no other reason. The purpose of this show is to glorify God, and to do that by helping people grow, to help you grow, to help me grow, to help Brandon grow. We are far from perfect. We're far from done. And like Brandon said so eloquently, man, God has a special plan for us. He loves us and he's in control. We just got to let go and live each day the best we can. So Brandon, thanks for being here. To the listeners and viewers, thank you for being here. We love you. And like this show says, listen, do, and repeat for life. This is Dave Pascal with the Remarkable People Podcast. Until next time.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat for life.